My name is Frank Cardoza, and I got out of the Navy, the regular Navy, as a petty officer second class. I graduated from high school in 1971. Shortly after, I received a draft notice. I believe I was number 85 on the lottery, and so I decided to enlist in the Navy. I delayed my enlistment, signing the contract under the cash program. And then in June 1972 is when I went into the Navy, and did my boot camp in San Diego. Now that was an interesting time for me because as we got on the bus, we were getting ready to leave, and a bunch of other guys with me. I enlisted in San Bernardino, California, and the bus ride was only roughly about 2.5 hours. We got to the Marine Corps boot camp first, where the Marine Sergeant, drill instructor, comes yelling on the bus and getting all the Marines off, and of course they went through the traditional threatening the Navy guys, saying that don't you be laughing or you're going to be joining us shortly. And I understood from previous relations that did go in the Navy that at one time the Navy did exchange boot camps. You know, you had an opportunity to go train with the Marines and vice versa. So after they unloaded, we went to the Navy base there at Naval Training Center in San Diego and started our boot camp. We slept, and then next morning we were woken up and we started transitioning from civilian to military. We were herded into a big room, and we put all of our civilian clothes in a box and given instructions. All the time they were yelling at us, saying that, hey, let's move it, and so we were issued our military clothes as close to possible they fit. Some of us were heavy, some of us were thin. I remember all kinds of different sizes of guys that were going in, that were being transitioned into boot camp. The following day we went for inoculation. I believe we were some of the last groups to use the air guns for inoculation, which means that you basically lined up in your skivvies back of some guy, and they had 2 corpsmen on either side just pumping you with vaccinations. And so that's what our vaccination was. We went in and got our haircuts, and then we were assigned to a company. I was assigned to company, I believe it was 191, and there was a group of, I want to say 50 of us, and we were from all parts of the country. I mean, we were from California, Hawaii, Texas, the East Coast states, and there we learned to get along. We start working as a team. It was something different for me, because all of a sudden, from an individual, you're now part of a larger group. You become part of a larger machine. And so during our short 9 weeks of boot camp, we worked. We got up early in the morning, and we went to bed late at night. We had our turn working in the kitchen in the mess hall, and those were even earlier hours. Learning discipline, learning get up every morning. We polish shoes, which I'm sure we don't do that anymore. We learned to wash our uniforms by hand, because it was a condensed boot camp. It had been condensed from 13 weeks down to 9 weeks for whatever reason. Of course, the year was in 1972. We were just winding down in Vietnam. We heard stories that a peace treaty had been signed. So we thought the war was over. Some of us had missed the war. Just the same, we continued to study, do our thing. Upon graduation, we were all dressed up, lined up on the tarmac. It was hot that year. It was out again in June, and it did get hot on the tarmac. Some of us were selected to go directly to the fleet, while others were selected to go on to A school. I was one of the fortunate ones. I went to A school, and from there I became a radioman. learning all the intricacies of radio. And then shortly, it was a short training, I want to say, of learning procedures, learning regulations on radio communications, learning the various equipment that we had to use, which incidentally, that's where I learned how to type. I came out of high school not learning how to type, but using teletype machines, it was a challenge because they weren't like typewriters. You actually had to force the machine down to type your message. And then upon graduation of A school, which again, the last 2 weeks of A school was grueling because you actually stood watch in actual radio room or mock-up radio rooms where you had to play with equipment. You were given scenarios, and so you actually stood 8-hour watches at various times of the clock. I enjoyed the midnight to 8 o'clock shift because that was the quietest one, apparently. Learned to drink coffee, one of the habits I have even to this date. Never lost the love of coffee. So upon graduating from A school, then I was assigned to a C school, where I learned Morse code, which incidentally, it's a dying art because I never once used it once I got to the fleet. But upon graduation of Morse code school, I reported to the ship. I went home for 30 days first, and then I reported to the ship, the USS Abnaki.